Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome back for the paranormal side of this channel. Before we get into today's upload, a couple links I'd like to share. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch displayed directly under this video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, it is a little chilly, but not too cold to take a walk on the paranormal side. So let's get to it, shall we? Today's first experience on the paranormal side. English is not my first language, so I am sorry if I am hard to understand. This experience happened to me on July of 2010 while I was on the Camino de Santiago in Spain. Many spiritual things happened during that 800 kilometers I walked, but this experience was unexplainable, and I have never met anyone with a similar story. It was my 25th day walking. I had already walked 730 kilometers. Night came, and I had no place to sleep. Many people like me had to sleep on the street, and the city we were in had to open a gym, school, and church to accommodate all the pilgrims who went to sleep on the street that night. I decided to wake up early, around 4 in the morning, since I hadn't slept very well. I started walking the last 70 kilometers to Santiago de Compostela. The path that left this city was in the forest, and on the left side of the path there was a fence, and after the fence a road, so it seemed pretty safe to walk. After 15 minutes on the way through the forest, my only flashlight I had started to fail. Oh yeah, I remembered that because I slept in a place without much support for a pilgrim. I had no place to recharge my single flashlight. Even with the battery failing, there was still some light, and I kept walking. Later, my flashlight just went out. Everything was completely black, very black after all. It was still 4:15 in the morning. Many people have passed this way. Adjusting my vision, it was soon possible to see a trampled floor that became a little white, showing the path in front of me. I decided to continue walking, but not with the agility as when I had my flashlight working. After 3 minutes of walking in total darkness, I reached a point in the path where I could no longer see the whitened floor. The impression I had is that right in the middle of the path in the forest, there was a tree. That did not make much sense to me. Even straining my eyes and looking at the ground, I could see that the path ended there, and there was something right in the pathway, which at that moment I still thought was a tree planted in front of me. Still trying to understand what was happening, I looked ahead and everything was black. I couldn't see any surrounding light. I decided to look up and see the tree where it went. It was very, very tall. It seemed that it had no end. I could realize with my eyes adjusting that this tree was smooth black, that did not reflect any light from the environment. From that moment on, my whole body shivered, and I was extremely distressed, not knowing what to do if I stayed there or turned back. Since there was no way to go forward, while I was thinking about what to do, I could hear and notice some people walking behind me. I could hear them, and at that same time, I was staring at that black thing that in my head could only be a giant black tree. But none of this made sense. After a few moments, I could hear them getting closer, and I could see a ray of light. That was from their flashlight getting closer and closer. A few seconds later, their light reached me. When that beam of light illuminated me and illuminated the being that was in front of me, it took off like a jet rocket so fast that I could feel the wind blowing hard on my face. Yes, it was not a tree. There was a being that I had no idea was standing in front of me, right in the middle of my path. This being had no eyes, wings, or any shape that I could recognize. It looked more like a monolith, like the one from the movie 2001, An Odyssey, that took off with tremendous force without making any noise, just throwing all of the wind in my face. I was astonished. The two men who were walking arrived, and I asked to accompany them until the sun came up, so I did. Between my flashlight going completely out and the men approaching me, it took about 3.5 minutes, so my meeting with this being in the middle of my way took a few seconds. At that time seemed like an eternity. Now, something of importance. The Camino del Santiago, known in English as the Way of St. James, is a network of pilgrim ways or pilgrimes leading to a shrine of the Apostle St. James the Great in the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in Galicia in northwestern Spain, where tradition holds that the remains of the apostle are buried. So if you sit and really think about this experience this person had, they're on this pilgrimage going to a holy place. Obviously, their heart and mind is full of the Lord. And they continue their path down this dark trail. And they are met with a black entity in the middle of this path, almost trying to stop them to go and finish their voyage to a very holy, sacred place. Now, in my head or mind, I'm thinking the only thing that really wants to stop someone from going on a holy pilgrimage is something completely unholy. But I'll let you decide for yourself. Today's second experience on the paranormal side. So I live in a rural place in a very heavily wooded area. I've always felt totally safe in the woods, even at night. I used to go for walks all of the time. I'm not a real skeptic. I do believe in some paranormal things, though I've never experienced anything until this. Regardless, I still always try and find the most logical explanation, and I don't often feel scared or unnerved by things. This experience, however, really freaked me out, and I've been thinking about it ever since it happened. So, this was a few weeks ago. My parents had gone to bed, but I wanted to stay up a little while. So I settled into the living room to read. Our living room has these great big windows, almost covering the entire wall. I left the blinds open and turned on one lamp and sat right by the window. My elderly dog, who had been let out already to go to the bathroom for the night, was back inside, started pacing the house and barking and wouldn't settle down. This is unlike her. She's super old, so she usually goes right to bed. And she knows not to bark in the house like that. We let her out again, and she walked right back in. Gave her some food. And for about an hour, she kept pacing and barking. She wasn't even barking at the windows or looking outside. She just paced up and down the halls and barked after nothing in particular. This was definitely weirding me out, but I just shrugged it off, and then she finally settled down to sleep in my parents' bedroom. About 20 minutes later, I'm reading on the couch by the window with my cat when I heard an animal walking outside. I only heard it take a few steps. It sounded large, and I figured it was probably a deer. The cat jumps up and starts acting super interested in what was outside, pacing up and down the windowsill and peering out. Then, after a few moments, the screen of the window furthest from across the room starts shaking violently, like something is shaking, banging on it really hard. Again, these windows span the whole wall. It startled me, and I looked over. I couldn't make anything out in the dark or see what was outside. And then the shaking and banging grew even more violent, and the windows next to me started to shake as well. The cat freaked out and ran out of the room. At this point, I'm really scared, and I did something you'll probably think is kind of silly. I literally closed my eyes and threw the blanket over my head and waited for it to stop. The shaking and banging lasted for a few seconds more. I remember being taken aback at how much force seemed to be behind it. I just couldn't bring myself to look. I had this awful feeling, and I think if I looked and saw something horrible, it would really traumatize me. It finally stopped, and I stayed under that blanket for 2 hours before I could work up the nerve to get up and go to my bedroom. The next morning, I woke up, calmed down, and figured it was probably some animal. I go outside to look at the window and see if I could find any tracks or something, and look at the screens. What I found made my skin crawl. There was a single long diagonal slash in the window screen of the windows I was sitting right next to. If you were standing in front of where the slash is and looking inside, the slash aligns over the spot I was sitting at. There were no tracks, so that's creepy. And what's weird to me is if it was an animal, why? Why weren't there more slashes? Just one single deliberate slash is strange. There were absolutely no scratch marks or slashes anywhere else on the screen, or the windows, just that one. The other screens were just pretty loose now. If it was a bird, I would have heard its wings flapping. I feel like I would have heard animal sounds if it were any kind of animal. If it was a person, which is even scarier to me, I would think someone who would be doing something like this would have taken it further and probably done more to scare or intimidate than just shake some windows and slash one and then leave and scare me. Also, there were no tracks outside in the mud. Besides the shaking and banging, there was absolutely no other sounds. And since we live rurally, the chance that it was a person seems very unlikely. It freaks me out, but there's nothing I can really do about it other than put up trail cams. Nothing like this has ever happened to me the entire time we've lived here. A few nights before this happened, I actually started feeling some bad vibes from the woods at night. To be honest, like I said, I am normally very at ease with them. But I was out smoking a few nights before in my backyard and just felt like I was being watched and something was making my skin crawl. And I have been avoiding going outside at night again. And then this happened. This experience really kind of freaked me out. But like I said, there's not much more I can do other than put cameras up. Today's third experience on the paranormal side. Hey, first of all, my English is bad. My first language is German. I hope you can understand me. I myself am a person who can only believe in things that I see for myself. I am very skeptical even then. But I swear that this happened, and I thought maybe someone can help. When I was 14, we lived in this house from the 70s for 2 years. My parents lived downstairs, and I lived upstairs by myself. I had a living room, kitchen, a room for my rabbits, and my bedroom, with a small door that led to a small windowless room, like a chamber. The door of the chamber was almost 1.5 meters high, so even I had to bend down. I always had a bad conscience in this house, but put it down by saying that it was generally a very anxious child. I used the chamber for moving boxes and clothes, etc. Because I always had a bad feeling, I always locked the door of the chamber with a key. At the time, we had a dog, an Australian Shepherd, who was very fixated on my mom. She only slept with her and followed her everywhere. I have never seen her without the dog. One day I came home from school and wanted to go to my room when suddenly my dog came up alone. I was very confused because she has never done that in all the years that we had her. I thought maybe she doesn't want to be with my dad right now and will go away when my mom gets home from work. I lie on my bed for hours, but my dog just wouldn't walk away. She didn't leave when my mom came home, nor when my mom came upstairs to get our dog because she was going to sleep. She did not want to leave. Even my parents were confused because that never happened. Our dog slept with me until morning and only went down when I went to school. The next day she came up again in the evening and stayed with me until morning. This happened the same way for about a week. I couldn't explain it. The dog that never left my mom's side didn't even go with her anymore, even when she called for her. When she slept with me for days, she was very restless one evening and kept barking out the window over my bed. I thought because it was raining that she saw the reflection of herself in it and barked because of that. When I woke up the next day, my dog was lying on the bed as usual. I got up and, as always, looked in my mirror first. I looked at myself and suddenly saw the chamber that was always locked was open. I immediately ran to the door, closed it, and turned the key. I was in shock because I knew I always locked it, and I would never leave it open. I went to school, and when I came back, my dog never slept with me again. We now live in another house, and it's been 7 years, but my dog has never slept with me still. I'm sorry for it being hard to read and so long. I just hope someone can help me figure this out. Well, I mean, I'm no expert in the paranormal. I don't think anyone really is. But I'm thinking you had some bad juju in your chamber, my friend. And the dog was protecting you, and finally, maybe it was released and went out that night, the night your dog was barking, and she just wanted to keep you safe. Logical to me, but like I said, I am no expert. Today's fourth experience on the paranormal side. So my fiance used to live in this run-down, extremely old house. We were pretty sure it was actually a barn at one point that was then converted into a home. Well, let me tell you, that house is the most haunted location I have ever stepped foot into this day. It's been almost 4 years since we've been inside, and we'll never go back. When my fiancée was younger, she was kicked out of her childhood home and went to live with her best friend just down the road. Her room was actually a porch with its own exterior door and a door leading into the living room of the home. Just to set the scene for you a bit. She had vaguely warned me that there was something in the house, but I kind of just brushed it off. Well, one night I went to stay over with her. At the end of the night, we were both pretty tired and decided to go to bed. We got under the covers, all cuddled up, and not even 2 minutes after turning the lights out and closing our eyes, it happened. It sounded as if something very large and almost animalistic stomped from the other end of her room right up to the side of the bed and began breathing heavily and almost rhythmically while staring down at us. I know she heard it as well because the breathing began to get faster and faster, and the faster that thing was breathing, the tighter she was squeezing me. I never asked her if she felt the same, but I could feel that whatever the thing was evil. We were both absolutely terrified of what could have been looming over us like that, both too terrified to even open our eyes. We just lied there gripping each other out of pure terror. Then all at once it stopped. At the very same second the loud breathing stopped, the air around us got lighter. I shot up, my eyes darting around the room looking for anything to explain what we had just experienced. But there was nothing, just a dark room around us. We slept with all the lights on for the rest of the night. A different night that I was there, the glass of a picture frame shattered and woke us up. We would hear running upstairs in the loft, even though there was no one else in the house, and whispering that sounded like there was someone just outside of the window trying to tell you a secret. Something would bang on the door in between her room and the living room while violently shaking the doorknob. One day, an old baby picture of someone neither of us recognized just showed up on her table. And the nightmares I had when I would sleep there were unlike any I had ever had in my life. But nothing compared to the fear I felt that night that thing walked right up to us, watching us in bed from less than a foot away. I will never forget that. Today's final experience on the paranormal side. My childhood friend was my dead aunt. She may have led me to her body. When I was 10 years old, my grandfather passed away, leaving the old family home to my mother. It's one of these old Victorian homes that's been in our family for well over 100 years. The house came with a plot of land in the back that at the point was basically a forest of trees. Me being 10 years old with a huge imagination, decided it would be the best place to go exploring. As I was exploring, I ran into another girl. I say hello and ask her name and if she lives around here. She said her name was Kay and said that her house was close to here. This made me happy to have another kid my age to play with. I asked if she wanted to play, and she agreed. From then on, the whole year, Kay and I were best friends and played together after school and on weekends. The only problem was Kay only wanted to play in the forest and would not go anywhere else. But again, I was happy to have a friend, so I didn't question it. But then my other grandfather got sick and was given less than a year to live. Our whole family moved back to be with him for his final days. He actually lived for over another year before we lost him. After a while, my parents and I moved back home, but when I got back, Kay never came over. Days went by, then weeks and months, and no Kay. Eventually, I moved on and figured she moved away. It wasn't until 15 years later I realized who Kay really was. My parents decided to move into a retirement community and left the house to me and my fiance. About a week into moving in, I was going through some old family photos when I got to a picture of my mother, my grandfather, my grandmother, and another girl. But not just any girl, it was Kay. I was sure of it. I was completely freaked out. I took the photo to my mother and asked her to explain without mentioning that she looked like my old friend. My mother sighed and said she never wanted me to know, but our family had a dark past. The girl in the photo was Catherine, my mother's sister who went missing when she was 10. No sign of her had ever been found, even over 20 years later. It was suspect that a family member who committed suicide not long after her disappearance was at fault. This messed with me for a while, but I tried my best to move on. But then we had wildfires that burned down most of the forest in the backyard. Thankfully, our house had minimal damages, but the forest was a toast, literally. We decided to clear out the land, which resulted in a terrifying find. While digging up one of the tree trunks, one of the workers found bones, human bones. The police were called, and they did their police stuff and determined that the body found belonged to Catherine. They determined she died not long after going missing. Is this why Kay only wanted to play in the trees? Could she not leave, or did she want me to find her body? And if so, why didn't she just tell me? Dang, that's scary. Whew. I cannot. I've had some pretty crazy stuff happen in my life. I think one day I'm just going to sit down and just kind of do a video about it. But I've shared a couple of things here. I'll share one with you. So, one night, 13 years ago, my daughter Isabel was probably a year old. Yeah, she was still in our room, in her crib. My oldest daughter Abigail was sleeping. My ex-wife, my daughter Belle. And I'd come home from work. I worked at GMAC as a insurance advisor. And I had gotten home, sat down, went out, I did my basic thing, took a shower, got relaxed. I lied on the couch and I was watching some TV. and I had fallen asleep. So I'm sleeping, and I woke up because I heard a noise. Now, the apartment we lived in at the time was a ground floor apartment, and if you walked in the front door, there was a big living room, and our bedroom and Abigail's bedroom were off of that. And then through another door was another living room. And then through a side doorway was a large kitchen with a bathroom. And then a doorway there on the side there that went down to a basement that was literally like 4 foot high. Just tall enough to have the furnace and hot water tank down there. And then another door leading to a porch that was locked. And so I'm sleeping on the couch, and I heard a door open. Lying there, thinking that it's my ex-wife, and I think we had been fighting or something, so I really didn't want to talk to her. That's why I was sleeping out in the living room. And I remember hearing like a dog collar and panting. And I was like, what the heck? In my head. Couldn't open my eyes because I was kind of freaked out. And I heard this thing brush across the table, the coffee table in front of me, and kind of go around the coffee table to be in front of me. So it was in between the table and the couch, directly in front of me. And at this point, I am petrified. I remember trying or thinking, what the heck is this? Oh my God. What's gonna happen? Is it gonna bite me in my face? Why do we have a dog in our house? A whole bunch of things. And it stayed there for a good while. And at one point, I was getting courage up, raising my courage level, and I was gonna yell out my ex-wife's name. And I couldn't. I couldn't get a word out. I thought about yelling help. Tried to do that. Nothing. And then it walked away. And I screamed some expletive and jumped up, turned on the light, turned on the other living room light, turned on the kitchen light, and I'm looking around. By then my ex-wife comes out. She's like, what's wrong? And I tell her. And we both at the same time turn and look out the hall, or look out the doorway to the kitchen, and right there is the small doorway to the basement, and it was open. And we kept that door locked because the girls, Belle was a year old, just learning how to walk. Actually, she was walking good at that point. And Abigail was 3, so she was into everything. Wow. And yeah, I remember we both looked at the door, and we both looked at each other, and I ran over and shut the door. An hour later, I got enough courage up, grabbed a samurai sword that I had, and went downstairs and looked, and there was nothing down there. And to this day, I will never forget the feeling I had, how it felt near me, what I felt like, what I heard. And I think it connects to my Ouija board story from when I was younger. But that's another story for another time, isn't it? Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed today's paranormal side. With that, I want to thank everybody for always tuning in. Please be kind to each other, and may the Great Spirit watch over all of us and guide us down that thing we call life. Till tomorrow, my friends.